All right, so ladies and gents, now we're going to take a look at what are called the determinants of demand. These are the non-price factors that will change demand and will thus shift a demand curve left or right. And once again, we're looking at an acronym here. I love acronyms in this class. And the acronym we're going to look at is TRIPE, T-R-I-P-E. Those stand for the 5 determinants of demand. The following cause the entire demand curve to shift. T stands for tastes and preferences. R stands for related goods, complements and substitutes. I stands for income. P stands for population. And E stands for expectations of future price changes. So that is TRIPE, the 5 determinants of demand. We're going to hit every single one of these specifically. Let's start off with tastes and preferences. This one seems pretty obvious. Preferences and tastes are affected by advertising, trends, health considerations, etc. When something becomes more popular, the demand for it goes up. When something becomes less popular, the demand for it goes down. For example, the demand for dark chocolate has increased because research has recently shown that it has health benefits that makes it more popular, and so therefore you have an increase in demand. Demand for spinach decreased when the FDA discovered high concentrations of E. coli, so now tastes and preferences go down for spinach, and therefore you have a decrease in demand. Now let's go to R. R is a little bit more complicated. R stands for related goods. There are 2 types of related goods, complements and substitutes. And let's start off with complements here. So complements are goods and services that are used in conjunction, that are used together. So for example, when the price of gasoline increases, the demand for its complement, Hummers, decreases. And the reason is when the price of gas goes up, people want to buy less gas-guzzling cars. That makes a lot of sense. Another example, when the price of movie tickets decreases, the demand for theater popcorn increases. Because if the price of movie tickets went down, that meant that there's probably going to be more people going into the movies, which means that they are going to be buying more popcorn. So as the price of the movie tickets decreases, the demand for the theater popcorn increases. You notice here there's an inverse relationship between the price of one good and the demand for the other. So for example, with the second example, with the movie tickets and the popcorn, the price of the movie ticket decreased, and therefore the demand for the theater popcorn increased. So it was an inverse relationship there. And that's always going to happen with complements. Now, sometimes I have very astute students that say to me, well, I thought price changes quantity demanded and not demand. And that is a very, very good point. But look at what's happening here. Let's look, for example, for the second example. When the price of movie tickets decreases, the demand for theater popcorn increases. What's happening here is we're looking at how the price of movie tickets affected the demand for popcorn. We're not looking at how the price of popcorn affected the demand for popcorn. Okay, so we're looking at how the price of something else affects the demand for something. Okay, so there is a distinction there. We're looking at the price of a separate good and how it affects the demand for another good. All right, so let's move on to the second type of related good, which is substitutes. So substitutes are goods and services that are used in lieu of other goods and services. So for example, when the price of gasoline increases, the demand for ethanol increases. Because when the price of gasoline goes up, people start saying, well, I'll use ethanol instead of gas. They substitute the ethanol for the gas. Second example, when the price of movie tickets increases, the demand for DVDs increases because people are going to go to the movies less, and therefore they're going to go, if they want us to watch those movies, they're going to go ahead and buy the DVDs. So as the price of movie tickets increases, the demand for DVDs increases. So I also want to show here that we have a direct relationship between, with substitutes, we have a direct relationship between the price of the original thing and then the demand for the other. So for that second example, it says when the price of movie tickets increases, demand for DVDs increases. So when the price of the movie tickets went up, the demand for the DVDs went up as well. They went the same way. Okay, that's always going to happen with substitutes. You're going to have a direct relationship. They're going to move the same way there. All right, so let's move on to I, standing for income. This one is a little bit more easy to understand intuitively. So, income of consumers. When consumers' incomes increases, the demand for normal goods and services increases. A normal good is a good that when you have more money, you buy more of it. Most goods out there are normal goods. Okay, so for example, more income means more demand for steak. The demand for inferior goods and services decreases. So inferior goods are goods that when you have more money, you actually want less of it. So for example, more income means less demand for top ramen. Because people have more money, they say, why do I need the top ramen? I can buy better stuff with that. Even though some people love and live for top ramen. But nevertheless, it's generally considered an inferior good. Okay, so that is income, which is the third determinant of demand. Now let's go on to population. This one's pretty simple. More population, more demand. So for example, as America's population grows, so does the demand for housing. So an increased population is going to increase demand for housing. Less population, less demand. So for example, as Japan's population declines, so does its demand for education. There's going to be fewer Japanese schools because there are fewer children to get educated. And lastly, we're going to look at E. And E stands for expectations of future price changes. So if consumers expect prices to rise in the future, then demand increases now. So we're looking at what's happening to demand now. So if consumers, they expect prices to rise in the future, they want to buy before that price increase. And so therefore the demand is going to increase now. So for example, prior to Hurricane Katrina and Rita several years ago, consumers expected higher fuel prices, and this caused demand for fuel to increase because people wanted to buy it before the price went up. If consumers expect prices to fall in the future, then demand decreases now. And remember, we're looking at the now right here. Because what's going to happen is people are going to want to wait to buy that good. If they expect the price of the good to fall, they say, you know what, let's just wait and let's buy it in the future. They don't buy it now, so therefore demand decreases now. So for example, if investors believe stock prices are going to decline, then demand for stocks decreases because they'd rather just wait and buy them when they're cheaper in a few months or a few years or whatever it might be. All right, so now we're going to get into our demand graph here and shifting around the demand curve. So we're going to look at what are called changes in demand. So when there is an increase in demand, the demand curve is going to shift to the right. If there's a decrease in demand, the demand curve is going to shift to the left. An increase is always to the right in economics. A decrease is to the left in economics. So let's look at an example here. All right, so we're going to start off with our demand curve. So we start off with price, which we represent by the variable P, on our y-axis. So every demand curve is going to start off looking like this. We're going to have quantity on our x-axis, and then we have a downward sloping demand curve, which we label D. So whenever you do these problems, you're going to start off just like this. Okay, prices on your y-axis, quantities on your x-axis, then we have a downward sloping demand curve, which we call D. So our market is going to be bus tickets for this scenario. So it says the price of airlines tickets doubles. What happens to the market for bus tickets and why? So that is the question. So we want to go ahead and label our market. Our market is bus tickets. You could also put by where you see Q for quantity, you can put the quantity of bus tickets. Okay, but we definitely want to label our market. That's important because we got to know what we're talking about. So when we see that kind of scenario, the first thing we have to do is we have to figure out what is the determinant that change. So we have the price of airline tickets doubling and the market for bus tickets. So those are related goods because they're both used to travel. So our determinant is this. We have an increase in the price of a related good. And in particular, you have a substitute because bus tickets are substitutes for airline tickets. So you definitely want to tell me what is your determinant. And once you figure out the determinant, then you can go ahead and shift the demand curve the right way. So we have the price of airline tickets doubling, and then what happens to the market for bus tickets? So if the price of airline tickets doubles, people are going to substitute out of buying those airline tickets. They're going to want to buy bus tickets. So therefore, the demand for the bus tickets is going to go up. And that's the market that we're looking at right here is bus tickets. So all we do is this to show an increase in demand. You draw an arrow, and you draw a new line, and you label that D1. That's it. So now you have everything I'm looking for. I'm looking for price on your y-axis. I'm looking at quantity on your x-axis. I'm looking at the market. So the market is for bus tickets. We have our determinant, which was related goods. Then we have our demand curve, our original demand curve, which we called D. Demand curve increased, shifted to the right. We have our arrow showing that, and we have our new demand curve, D1. Now, if you have a scenario that decreases demand, then you'd go ahead and shift the demand curve to the left. Because remember, an increase is to the right, and a decrease is to the left. All right, so let's move on to the assessment here. And for this, we're going to do a couple of scenarios, a couple of these demand scenarios. So for number one, we're going to graph the market for Ferraris after people's incomes have decreased. So we're going to state the determinant of demand that caused the change in demand. So you're going to go ahead and start off by labeling your axes, putting in your original demand curve, and then telling me your market. You're going to tell me the determinant, and then you're going to shift your demand curve left or right, depending on whether there was an increase or decrease in demand, and then that new demand curve is going to be called D1. If you have all those things, you will get full credit. So for number two, we're going to graph the market for LA Lakers jerseys after the Lakers won the title in 2010. We're going to state the determinant of demand that caused the change in demand. So once again, we label our axes we have our original demand curve. We tell the market. We tell the determinant. Then we shift our demand curve left or right, depending on if it's an increase or decrease in demand. And we label that new demand curve D1. If you have all those things, you should be good to go. So I'll give you a few seconds here to go ahead and do that. And if you need to pause this video and go back and take a look at the example, that's perfectly fine. That's one of the great things about doing this on YouTube, is you can go back and see what happened. All right, so for a summary, in a paragraph today, go ahead and describe what you have learned. And we will do some more practice of this tomorrow. All right, so you guys have a good one. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.